So what about the rest of the enterprise in AI? In this episode of AI Insights with John Roese, I want to talk to you about the mid-market. What I mean by that is, we talk a lot about the largest enterprises in the world and governments and the big players like Dell, and we're doing great things. There's an amazing amount of activity going on. It just continues to get more interesting, but we have abundant resources and scale and maybe the patience to work through some of these issues. But the world is much more than just the largest enterprises in the world. In fact, there's an entire space that we'll call the mid-market, which are companies that might be $1 billion in revenue and hundreds or thousands of people in them, but they're not giant global enterprises. They are smaller. They do not have the same kind of IT capacity and scale. So the question is, are they relegated to consumer AI products, or is there some way for them to participate more aggressively in the AI capabilities of the world? Now, the reality of it is that, this is a market that in the early days was very organized around at scale, whether large training environments or large enterprise environments. A lot of the hardware and software and systems were complex and were designed for scale, but that has changed dramatically in the last year. And so a couple of things I want to share with you about, how we're seeing the rise of enterprise AI happen in the mid-market. Now, this is early. I will tell you, we're still working on this, and we're having lots of dialogues, but it's based on real dialogues with customers and real projects that we're seeing. The first and most impactful thing that we've seen recently, and this is very recently, is the rise of what we call personal agents and local AI. The idea of being able to run AI agents in a framework that lives on a device under your control. Now, this is code for OpenClaw, NemoClaw, Hermes. There's a number of these frameworks, Scout now from Microsoft. There's a number of these systems that are starting to emerge that are giving you an ability to actually deploy relatively complex agentic capability on a local device or on a single device or in whatever presence you would like to deploy them in. Now, these are very early technologies. They have some work to do around security and integration. We're doing that. But the bottom line is it does seem fairly inevitable that there is another place where you can deploy agentic behavior that is way more than a chatbot or a personal productivity tool. It's an agent that can literally do work for you or your company autonomously under your control. And now you have an opportunity to run that not in a cloud or not in some distant place, but on a device wherever you want it. That is an incredibly powerful tool. And the reality is, while large enterprises will use this for some of their footprint, when you're thinking about a mid-market customer that hasn't really done a lot of full enterprise-grade agentic, this kind of starting point is one that has significantly lower risk. The data is not in some random cloud environment out of your control. It is now under your control. It's on a device sitting in front of you. It is a place that you can deploy it in a retail environment, in a surgical theater, anywhere that you would like. The reality, though, is that in addition to the fact that you now have an environment where you can develop personalized agents, like, for instance, maybe you wanted agentic behavior in a store, but you wanted it to be completely localized to that store and to process data locally there. Doing that in the old world would have been a very heavy IT project. Today, with a GB10 and a NemoClaw environment and the right kind of adapters, you could literally interpret that data, act on it, interact verbally with your customers, and do complex tasks within that environment. And you could do it in a footprint that is measured in thousands of dollars and almost a limited amount of work for your technical teams. Now, the second piece, though, is that what we have seen, in addition to the rise of personal agents, which most people are not using yet, and there's still some work to be done, but we do see it as an inevitable tool that will make its way into the mid-market as a platform of choice to be able to provide cost-effective, controllable agentic behavior wherever you would like it to be. The second trend that we're seeing, though, is that we do not see a lot of mid-market AI value in doing it in your back-end systems of record, because candidly, just storing customer information or ERP or CRM data, while there's some agentic behavior you can add to it, it doesn't really impact your business in the kind of meaningful ways that would happen if you actually did it in your store, in your hospital, in your water treatment plant, in your distribution hub. And so the other thing that I found in dialogues with mid-market CIOs, and I've been having a lot of those, is that when they think about AI, They don't think of it as a productivity tool on their legacy systems of record. They think of it as a way to bring intelligence and automation into the real world. And the real world for them is retail or healthcare, or physical therapy or water distribution, any number of real places where they would like this to live. And when they think about that, they don't think about the way to do it as having the AI run in some other place. They think of it as running at the edge. And so the second big opportunity, personal agents give us a platform to use. The second big opportunity is that the majority of mid-market AI dialogues, when thinking about where to apply it, where to start, they start almost exclusively after you think through it with an edge opportunity. And again, this kind of makes sense. The real differentiation for a retailer is not how well they run their back-end CRM or ERP. It's what the in-store experience is. And do the customers enjoy being in there? Is it an immersive experience? Is it interactive? That kind of differentiation is powered by things at the edge, and those things exist in the real world. And so, whether we use personal agents or we use specific edge platforms, this idea that AI is going to originate in the mid-market from the outside in, as opposed to in the large enterprise where a lot of the big AI projects started from the inside out, in the data center, moving out towards the edge, is a very significant difference. And it explains to some degree why it's taken longer. But we are now, with new hardware platforms, personal agent frameworks, better data management tools, better distribution, better networking, better communication capabilities. We have tools now that make edge much more achievable. In fact, we have examples where for $4,000 you can deploy edge AI in a way that used to only be possible with hundreds of thousands of dollars in a data center. And so I feel like this combination of agentic frameworks becoming democratized with personal agents where you can run them at small scale and get almost the same capability of a large enterprise, and the ability to have more innovation around bringing AI directly to the edge environment makes it much more compatible with the mid-market opportunity, which is really about differentiation where it matters, not the back office, but the place where your customers are. The third dimension of this, however, is that tokenomics is very real. The cost of doing AI, if you don't manage it, becomes quite high. And in fact, if you believe that the only way you can use AI is over a particular generalized interface into the most advanced model in the world sitting somewhere else, you will find out very quickly that your bill could be quite high. We have examples, real examples, where a 20-person software development team leaning hard into agentic development without thinking about token economics ends up with a $100 million token bill. Imagine you're mid-market that you make $1 billion a year on a good day. Not all of that is profit, and suddenly you have a $100 million bill because you didn't think through how you're going to use coding assistants. Those are real scenarios that can happen. So mid-markets are much more sensitive towards cost variation. You don't have a lot of extra budget. And so the third dimension here is that as we think about hybrid AI and the different places we can run it, we have choice. We showed at Dell Technologies World that the economics of running your coding assistant models on, a personal environment on a GB10 literally have an ROI of 3 months versus using cloud APIs. Now, they're not exactly the same technology, and there are trade-offs, and in many cases, it's a hybrid environment where you use some frontier models and some local models. But the bottom line is we are moving very quickly to an environment where cost matters everywhere, and mid-market companies are even more sensitive. But because of those first two trends, we have opportunities to actually deploy our AI, not just for the retail environment, but maybe for the software development environment or for running our business in a way that actually is capital cost as opposed to OpEx and variable cost. Variable costs in AI that aren't predictable are very, very dangerous. If you're a big company, you can absorb some of the mistakes that happen. If you're a small company, it can put you out of business. And so token economics have always been a chilling factor for companies that realize that it's a risk, because if you get it wrong, you're out of business. But now we have new technologies, new deployment models, better open models, new agentic frameworks, and all of those give you an ability to control your costs if you think it through and make it predictable and still participate in things like advanced agentic software development and automating your business processes. And the last thing, though, is that, we've realized that it's not just for large enterprises or mid-market enterprises. The path to get there, to get to whatever the end state is not a big bang. It is incremental. And it always starts with finding the most important thing to go after and being able to execute it. Now, in enterprise, you had a big surface area and you could always find something. In my dialogues with mid-market companies, what I found is there were a bunch of areas that just weren't worth doing. They weren't that important. Doing stuff that's sitting in a SaaS service or in a back office in a cloud never was a compelling place to produce a significant amount of ROI for a mid-market company. But doing it in the retail environment or in the healthcare environment was absolutely exciting, but we didn't have the technology to get there. So for the first time, because of personal agents, because of new form factors, because of new ways to hybridize your environment and run things locally, you have an ability for the first time as mid-market customers to start to identify areas that not only are possible, but are actually exciting. And most of them will triangulate towards very business-specific AI outcomes, and the vast majority of them will exist at the edge in the real world of your business, as opposed to in some virtual back office that supports that business. The takeaway from all of this is, look, I pay a lot of attention to every dimension of the market. Large enterprise, well underway. Governments are moving a little slower, but they're getting there. Mid-markets always had a bit of a lag because, candidly, there was an assumption that all you got was the consumer technology. And now, for the first time, we're seeing technology that's designed to run kind of enterprise-grade capability, but do it based on the sensitivities of a mid-market company that has finite budgets, has limited technical capability, and has to be really focused on the edge as opposed to kind of academic exercises behind that edge environment. And so, from a Dell perspective, we're obviously building these technologies and we're starting to make them available. At Dell Technologies World, we had a lab where companies could come in and experiment and build their first use case in these personal agentic frameworks on things like GB10. And it really caused a lot of excitement. And I think if you are a mid-market customer and you're wondering where to start, I would go back to what I've said for years now, is find the area that will have the biggest impact. It's very likely an edge use case, but now for the first time, you can actually get the hardware, the software, the systems, the agentic framework, and even the models to actually do that in an environment that you can control and can ultimately deliver value that is within the boundaries of how your business operates and does not create this unbounded risk of token economics or other dimensions that, quite frankly, would prevent you from moving forward. So it's an exciting time to be. I think this year is going to be kind of an accelerant for the mid-market, not because you didn't know what to do, but for the first time, we as an industry have given you the tools to actually go do it.